Hi, I'm Patrick Marlette, and welcome to the MTG Untapped podcast. I'm joined by Will. Hi.
Hello.
And we've got a few announcements to make off the bat here I want to get to, but just to go over the general talking points for today, we're going to be discussing, as the thumbnail would suggest, group hug and EDH and cEDH settings, defining that, going over core cards for those lists, and just general overview of some decks seen in that space. I know there's some interest in playing and building group hug lists, and we kind of want to discuss whether those strategies are viable outside of politics or just having a good time. Then we have how decks evolve, and this isn't just discussing redundant effects like adding more of a combo card to a list over time. It's cards that pivot the general strategy of the deck, right? And those both fit into how decks evolve. Sometimes evolutions are minor, and sometimes they're major. We used to have tails, apparently. And we want to do a deck overview, more of like a review overview. This is our previous call to action last week was for the same thing. Decks, like, again, I still do get people that direct message me about helping them build out their list or making it more competitive within a budget, whatever the specifics are. I still get those. So we're going to be discussing one of the off-meta cEDH list we had mentioned last week, but also we have a video coming up on this deck in particular. It's like a listicle of 10 of these decks, but we're going to be discussing Octavia in mono blue. And so what I ask you guys in the audience is, if there's a list that you are brewing or you're trying to work within a certain budget or within a certain theme, feel free to send us that deck list or the legendary minimum. And if it's the most upvoted list here, then we'll discuss it on the next podcast. Also, if there's a lot of different legendaries suggested in the comments after this video, I'll put it to a poll on the channel, and I think that's going to give us the clear winner, because I know engagement on other people's comments in the comment section is usually slight. But I do want to start with Octavia. And Will, how are you, by the way? I'm just talking about the storm.
I'm good. I'm looking forward to discussing this deck because it is a weird wonder.
Yeah, it's funny because you don't really see the strategy for mono blue list. You know, it's control still, but then the general strategy is largely different from other lists, and obviously we'll jump into it when we jump into it. But I'm gonna do a thing. I'm gonna check my emails really quick one last time. And then I've got like a minor announcement.
Depending on the outcome of the emails, yeah.
Well, I mean, D made it sound like it was okay to just fire away, right?
Yeah.
All right. So to those of you viewing now, welcome. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for dropping by the MTG podcast. I should say Untapped the TCG podcast in the future, because we are going to discuss more games than just MTG, but it's relevant for today because the channel is now MTG Brand Ambassador. So it's not contracted. It will be. And what that means for you guys, the viewing audience, is that there's just going to be more content, but specifically content that is curated and with new releases at the core of them. I know the strategy isn't just to discuss cards from upcoming sets and who knows what we'll get to talk about. It could just be new art or a brand new card. I have no idea. But hopefully they don't do us dirty like that, because this is almost exclusively a commander-oriented MTG channel. But this might expand the type of content we discuss on here. So I'm very excited for it. I think Will's excited for it. You know,
very much so, yeah.
Right, but it's an opportunity for I and the team to put our heads together and produce fun content for you guys with original content, or being at the starting line with everyone else when it comes to releasing new content, which is funny because we've been, this channel is a legacy channel. It's been around for a couple years, and we only fired things back up last month. So I mean, I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth, but it was nice, to say the least, that they reached out. And funny that it happened now rather than previously. But I mean, I'm happy for it. So I mean, really, it's just more content. So I'm excited for that. Hopefully some we'll again, like none of this is contracted, but I've got ideas that I think would play well with like original content. So we'll see what happens. Always at the same times as our weekly playgroup, says Al Jazz. I'm sorry about that. Just move your playgroup time, or put this on in the background. And useless knowledge. MTG says morning, everyone. Morning. Welcome, everyone. This is a live streamed podcast. That's right. So your opinions and thoughts and voices I will express for you here, but also the comments are left after the video. So people that want to engage with us during the podcast, the best way to do that is, of course, live. But if when it comes to submitting deck lists, please do so in the comments afterwards. All right. So Octavia, I feel like we should start here, and I'll let you tackle this because this is your list, right? The one we're going to be looking at.
This one was a list I brewed around when Strixhaven came out, and it was funny because I had to go back to this list and remove Hull Breacher from it because Hull Breacher was legal back then.
Not now.
Yeah, not now. So the general list, or the general idea for this list, is that you have Octavia as your commander. You can cast instant sorceries and different kind of control spells to get stuff in your grave. Once you get that critical mass of things in graveyard, Octavia costs 2. And I'll quickly go over Octavia. Octavia costs 8 generic and 2 blue for an 8/8 elemental octopus legendary creature. This spell costs 8 less to cast if you have 8 or more instant or sorcery cards in your graveyard. Ward 8. Magecraft, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, or cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, target creature has base power and toughness 8/8 until end of turn. So, the idea of this deck is that you control the game a little bit early, use value creatures to just get more cards in hand and more cards in grave. Then you cast Octavia and turn those value creatures into massive beaters, and you just start knocking people out of the game. The other funny thing is, Octavia is also a combat trick, because it isn't target creature you control. So if that Tymna player wants to just ding someone with an elf to draw a card, no, that's 8 damage.
Huh. Target creature has base power and toughness. Oh, okay. That's so weird. So how do you... Okay, so the general strategy here, is there a way to... Is there like an infinite token, infinite 8/8 strategy? Infinite 8/8.
The idea of this deck isn't really to go infinite. It's just get Octavia out and control the game. So the deck is mostly removal and interaction, and then value pieces. One of the interesting cards in here that I was thinking of removing, but I just could not help myself, was Tempted by the Orc, or Auric. I don't know how to pronounce that, but it's 1 and triple blue for sorcery that says, for each opponent, gain control of up to 1 target creature or planeswalker that player controls with mana value 3 or less, which is really good because that's 1 card, get 3 usually very high value creatures, and that can kind of steal the game away, in addition to the fact that it just gets you 3 bodies.
Well, so the general goal is to then... Okay, so first off, how quickly do you get to this being... You
pretty quickly, because you just have a bunch of different instances that you can drop whenever. You can throw out counter spells willy-nilly for the most part, because you're probably going to draw into more stuff. And then you have a bit of stacks to help slow down the game if you don't get there fast enough. But you get there pretty quickly. Like by about turn 4-ish, you get there, which seems slow for cEDH, but when you remember that this deck runs, I think, like 15 counter spells,
yeah,
no one's winning quickly.
Well, you're also on fast mana, so it's not like you can't just cheat it. Like, you don't need to cast it for...
you could just pay
blue.
the 10. You're probably not going to pay the 10, but you could just pay the 10.
No. Is there a Git probe in here?
Yeah, there is a Gitaxian probe. There's also a bunch of windfall effects, because you have windfall and what is it? Jace's Archivist. So you can just kind of dump your hand, and then you already have the 8 things engraved.
Right. So let me see here. Jace's Archivist, right? So if you guys don't know this wheel effect, it's just another wheel that's a body. I don't know when this card came out, but you rarely see it, but it does fall into a few strategies, like this one, obviously. I like Archmage in here, obviously, because you want all the draw you can get. But I'd be curious to see this play genuinely.
Yeah.
Cephalid Constable. So,
So the two interesting things that you can do in this deck are Cephalid Constable and Champion of Wits. Cephalid Constable says when you deal damage to, or when this does damage to a player, return that many permanents on their board to their hand. If you make Constable an 8/8, you bounce 8 permanents. So all of their lands, all of their creatures, all of their everything gets returned to hand. In addition, you have Champion of Wits, which in response to the ETB trigger, you can make Champion an 8/8, and then you draw 8 cards and discard 2 cards. So Champion is just a reload.
just battlefield. Enters the battlefield. So on trigger, you would hit it. You
Yep.
may draw cards equal to. Okay, so whatever you cast is a target creature. So it doesn't really matter what you're casting. So there's a little bit of setup with this, but obviously you're probably fine. If only it gave them Ward 8 as well.
That would be fantastic. Oh, don't worry, you just can't touch my stuff. But
Right.
we
Well, I
do
mean, you want to
we
help, like, you want to help it get through, like, on the attack. You know what I mean? Or
yep. We do
see.
have Spellskite though, which kind of helps with that
Yeah, I get
because
that.
it does redirect for a lot of different things. And if someone tries to bolt something, you can make Spellskite an 8/8, and then it can eat as many lightning bolts as you want. And by
That's
as
true.
many as you want, I mean 3.
3. Minimum 3. And 4 shocks. Thieving
Yeah.
Skydiver's dope here. These are all dope here. I
Yeah.
like. Is there any other like based off attack power things in the list, or is there not enough? Or is there
It's
more support in that regard?
There's only like 3 things in blue in general that care about their attack power to a good degree, and I'm not running one of them because the other one is it's like Divining Spirit or something like that, but I can just read off what it does. It's 3 blue blue for a 2/2 flyer that says when this deals combat damage to a player, you and that player draw that many cards. So if it does 8, you draw 8, but the opponent also draws 8. So
Right.
it's
So
it's questionable.
right. So it's interesting. There's no baked in infinite combo or combo line that wins the game on the spot. Is there token generation to like have more 8/8s potentially?
You don't really need it because in cEDH, you hit the black deck 2 to 3 times, and then most of their stuff dies down. No Adnos, no Necro, because they don't have the life to use it anymore. And then you just beat down everyone else. You don't need to go too wide because you only need like 2 to 3 8/8s swinging a turn, and Octavia is one of them. So
Right. I guess that's true. I mean, what, 40 life? Let's just say people are losing life to shock lands, fetches, all that stuff. You really only need to do, what, 8, 16, 24, 32.
it's
Okay,
a
so
15 attacks in total if nothing changes, but usually a player will get themselves down past like 1 or 2 hits by themselves.
mhm. Well, I mean, Octavia is doing commander damage, so
Also true.
that is relevant. But for the rest of your body, if you're just trying to life-wise kill them, but yeah, I'm interested to see the stacks package here too, because I feel like that's going to play a large part. Orb of Dreams is
Yep,
obviously a good one for
it's
getting your
so
attacks in.
sweet. It's
Yeah,
so fantastic. There's just a bunch of random things that increase cost or just say this can't do blank. Just the generic stacks package if you're not in white.
right. There aren't that many blue hate bears that I can think of that people like to run.
I ran Hull Breacher, but that's not an option anymore.
Yeah, but then like they had to make the one hate bear for blue almost too good is the issue.
Yeah.
Someone
I
says
mean,
they love Pilferer. Wait, where am I? Did I just miss? Oh, Ghostly Pilferer.
Ghostly Pilfer is 1 and a blue for a 2/1. Whenever this becomes untapped, you can pay 2 to draw a card. Whenever opponent casts a spell anywhere but from their hand, you draw a card, and you can discard a card to make this unblockable.
Would you say that Pilferer has pulled its weight? Because I know for a lot of people, when it was announced, it's only 15 cents, so clearly it's not like Hull Breacher value to people. But do you feel like this has been consistent? And like, obviously, this list can probably leverage this better than in most because the draw is relevant. But how far have you gone with slotting Ghostly Pilferer into lists? Like, does it make it into your partner's decks? The draw is in the CZ.
I put it into a couple decks. I'll put it into like 2 color decks usually because it is a really good draw engine. It's just that if you have 3 or more colors, there's better things to run usually. But if you're doing like, as I love to bring up, Candlekeep Sage Abdel, this isn't that bad. It draws you like 3-4 cards in a game, which for a 2-mana card is pretty good.
Okay, so when you if it were to come down by the time the game ends. You're saying you're net averaging 2 to 3 cards by itself?
Yeah, so it replaces itself, and then there's a couple decks that try to do some
Huh.
crazy things.
Well,
Because
I mean,
for
like
instance,
Underworld Breach would cause it to trigger a lot,
exactly,
right? So if it's out before an Underworld Breach turn, they need to respond to it by killing
they
it,
need to kill it.
right? Or like cross their fingers on getting that initial brain freeze off or whatever with enough copies to where they're going to have enough to
Yeah,
just pull the solutions.
because if they're doing intuition lines, they're probably going to not buyback, flashback Savine's Reclamation, which is a draw. Then they're going to get into play Underworld Breach, and then they're going to need to crack Lion's Eye Diamond, play something from Graveyard, which is a draw. Then they're
Mm-hmm.
going to need to replay Lion's Eye Diamond, which is a draw, and then they can start trying to remove the Pilfer. But at that point, you probably have a little bit of interaction, which is going to make you draw more. So kind of
So,
hard to deal with this once the breach starts up.
so someone's saying no Spectral Sailor, and is this a card you consider the flash flying draw card?
You could put it in just because it is an evasive creature with flash, so it's like pseudo haste,
Right.
and you can draw off of it. So I don't hate Ghostly Pilfer. I just don't run Ghostly Pilfer.
Or Spectral Sailor, rather.
Or sorry, why did? Yes, thank you. Spectral Sailor. I don't hate Spectral Sailor. I just don't run it.
That's fair. Yeah, and I mean, if this deck generated like infinite blue mana in some way, obviously it's also an outlet. And some decks do that, obviously, like
It's also just
Naramea. Clearly, we've talked about her on the channel.
it's also just a draw, so you can hold up interaction, and if you don't use it, draw a card or two.
Yeah, that's not bad. Oh, no stacks. No, there's stacks in this package. And on that note, guys, if you want to check out any of these lists, like the decks that we're going to discuss today are all in the description. So provided you're interested in checking out Octavia, there you go. Also, if you're interested in having us check out any of your lists, feel free to leave them in the comments after this video. Again, the most upvoted list is the one we'll check out. If there are only a few, if there are a lot, we'll take the lot of upvoted lists and I'll put an image poll out for you guys to vote on in the community post tab for YouTube. So that way we can obviously give a fair shake to the list that were suggested. Cool, just wondering. Thank you. Useless. No worries, of course. All right, I think on that note, we should probably move on to our title discussion topic, which is group hug in Commander. So I just want to start with defining group hug, and I feel like I had a different impression of it, and I know you do, Will, but this is the first thing I got when I just looked up group hug MTG on Google, so it has to be the most reliable definition. But I'm reading this straight off of mtgfandom.com. Group hug is a deck archetype for multiplayer games. Often group hug decks do not have a way to win on their own. Instead, the goal of the player piloting is to extend the game as long as possible by supporting whatever player is currently behind and moderating the effects each player can play and resolve. So a little bit of politicking. While group hug strategies can appear innocent and far from threatening to begin with, they can quickly draw the ire of other players in the game when those players realize that the goal of the group hug player is to prevent them from winning the game.
So
all right,
I can agree with a good amount of that definition, but that second sentence is bull. Group hug definitely has plenty of ways to win, and usually group hug is kind of like supplemental. And I agree with the rest of the definition, such as giving other people value to extend the game to prevent the leading player from winning. That's good. That's a good definition. It's also the definition that you hear people use for stacks, which is a really good archetype, which is why I don't know why people don't play group hug more.
Really? Okay. So you're saying there's a good argument for group hug. So the discussion here is, outside of it largely being a political strategy for multiplayer games, namely Commander, are there benefits to running a group hug list in either an EDH or competitive setting? And you clearly have an opinion on this. I've never played group hug. I've made what could be considered group hug with Selesny and Savala. There's obviously Twain, which is the rabbit. And then we have a list that we can look at in a second that is your group hug variant. It's also in the description for Livio and Ludovic. But
yeah,
yeah,
and that's a cEDH deck as well, because there is an actual space for group hug in cEDH, which I know a lot of people will disagree with.
Huh. Okay, well, we'll fight them.
Yeah, I will.
But why do you feel that way? Well, we can look over Ludovic in a second, but before we even touch it, why do you feel there is room for group hug in cEDH? EDH I can maybe understand, right?
Yeah.
The pacing is a little different.
So in cEDH, the best use that you can get out of group hug is giving other people value, because the way that most cEDH games end is one player gets a ridiculous lead and takes over the game. But if you're giving everyone else a little bit of extra value, that one player is actually going to be slowed down. Because Howling Mine and Urza, that is my favorite example that pretty much everyone has probably seen, or at least thought of. Because
Right.
a lot of Urza decks run Howling Mine,
But you
and there's
tap it.
always
You tap
yeah,
it down.
but there's always that one time when Urza gets removed and it can't be replayed for 3 turns because of the Trinisphere in play and all that.
Right. Their own
And
Trinisphere.
then yeah, and then Howling Mine gives everyone like 3 extra cards that game. And if you've ever experienced that, the game slows down just as much from Howling Mine as it does from that Trinisphere. Because you like if you're in the lead, this is how I kind of visualize it. If you're in the lead and Howling Mine is in play, you're drawing 1 card, but the 3 people trying to stop you are drawing a collective 3 cards, so that Howling Mine is hurting you 3 times more than it's helping you. So Howling Mine is functioning a lot like a stacks piece because it's 3 times the chance for an opponent to draw a piece of removal than it is for you to draw something that's going to impact the game and win you the game.
Right, and it's symmetrical
So
at that too, though, because yes, it's it's obviously hurting you in this instance, and obviously Urza's trying to break the symmetry of these spells. Like these are oddities. Like they don't print too many cards nowadays where the effect is shut down when the card is tapped. Fortunately, so Urza's pool of cards doesn't get improved that much more over time. He's not a deck that would evolve, we would say. But yeah, Howling Mine, if it's tapped, no one draws a card. Trinisphere, I believe, when it's tapped, no one, the effect doesn't take effect. But it's funny because it is symmetrical because, it's not your Howling Mine, but the same is true for your opponent. Like they have to deal with 3 times the amount of threats that they would normally see, which is fine, I guess. But you'd say Urza's group hug?
I wouldn't say Urza's group hug, but I'd say Howling Mine in Urza gives a lot of people the visual they need to see why group hug can be good in cEDH.
Right. So I think most of the time when people point at a list and say that's group hug, they're really generally looking at the commander. And in most instances, it's just a commander that says, we all get to draw, have fun, we all get to draw. But that's not necessarily true. Like it can be that the commander has an effect that is mutually beneficial, but also the body of the 99 has cards that in fact help other players. So we can point out a few cards and effects that are also group hug, and I think it's important to put those into the definition here because it's not just a commander. Like if 1 card out of 100 cards in your deck is only doing the thing, is it really a group hug deck? Yes and no. but yeah,
it's not as much group hug if you only have like 1 or 2 things that benefit people. Because one thing that I brought up that you kind of agreed with was Wheel of Fortune, Windfall, those type of effects.
Mm-hmm.
They're group hug in a lot of scenarios because you'll play it just to make sure everyone has a hand to stop that one guy from winning.
It's funny because right. So you'd run consistently depending on your colors. Up to all the wheels you can get potentially, and Fueling Your Grave could be helpful in this instance. Time Twister obviously sort of negates the impact of that effect, and that is more of a strategic choice. But I want to talk more about wheels in a second, but there are other effects that do it. So obviously we think of draws as being group hug. We think of cards, like there are several enchantments that provide you with mana on your turn, but then potentially your opponents with mana on their turn. I'm looking at green mostly. There's one that gives like 2 green at main phase 1 or something. Is it
yeah I know exactly what you're talking about. It's 1 green for an enchantment that does that,
right? But spells like that, spells that provide tokens for your opponents, gold, treasure, creature tokens, like anything that's going to provide your opponents with a board state that they wouldn't otherwise have, those are group hug in my opinion. And decks don't always manipulate all of those effects, but generally speaking, I'd say largely a group hug list will. Is that fair?
Yeah, like it'll utilize a lot more effects that do benefit people like that.
Right,
Um,
but so I want to look over your list for our group hug discussion here, Livio and Ludovic, but I understand, and I have opinions on wheels, and I've never really thought about wheels as like a group hug card per se, but they are. Because
yeah,
it's my general philosophy against wheels is that don't play them unless you're operating very, very quickly, right? If your
yep.
deck is trying to win super fast, I hate the term turbo, but like if you're trying to turbo really quickly and win the game, well, then yeah, wheels make sense. If you need to mull to, and I was giving you this example the other day, and I've had to do this plenty of games, but if you need a mulligan for a better keepable hand, and the hand you keep is 4 cards, but it's like a Chrome Mox, an Ancient Tomb, and a Wheel of Fortune plus, I don't know, red, Pyroblast, whatever, to give you the red, then like that was the keepable hand of all the mulls you made because you didn't have a fast start otherwise. What sucks is if you're 3rd or 4th in priority and like people had 7-hand keepables or six-hand keepables, which just loaded their board, you're giving them fuel and potentially shutting out this 4th person. If you're 4th in priority, you're behind, and then you're like quadruply behind. Like you're literally, if they've dumped their hands, like if everyone, we're saying this is a greedy world where everyone's playing this turbo list, and even stacks list, like even non-turbo lists that aren't trying to win the game quickly, but maybe group hug or shut down the game quickly with stacks, they're also running all the fast mana suite. Like they're also looking for hands that do the same thing as you. So odds are likely they've put down 2 to 3 viable resources moving forward. It could be like Green's Carpet of Flowers, and then that list did you would have really been shut out if a Trinity Sphere dropped. But the point being is, when you play the wheel, if you're not on the play and like 1st in priority, it's bad. It's generally bad, from my experience. And anytime you play a wheel like mid to late game to refuel, it's also bad. and not in a group hug setting, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, like with wheeling, when it benefits everyone too much, that's an example of just misplaying in general, and that's kind of why group hug gets a bad name a lot of the time. Because if you look at casual, people usually play group hug as herder. I'm just going to give everyone cards because funny.
Mm-hmm.
And in cEDH, people don't like group hug for that exact reason, because if you give someone who's kind of already ahead extra cards, you're screwed.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to know how to kind of balance it out. And for instance, in the deck that we're probably going to be taking a look at in a bit, I have a ton of stacks pieces in here. There's probably more stacks than there is group hug, but the group hug is kind of very important, and the stacks is to target specific things and slow them down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the balance that you need, because you can't just say, I'm going to make everyone do things better, and that's going to make me not lose the game. You have to balance it out with your own control pieces and your own control tools. And the reason why I think stacks is actually viable is if you give everybody one draw, like let's say one Howling Mind trigger,
Or group
and
hug,
everyone
rather,
got
is
one.
group hug is viable, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if everyone gets one draw off of a Howling Mind, the guy in the lead who's about to win gets one draw, but 3 cards are drawn that can stop like that person. Um, so that's basically making it so your one Howling Mine is functionally the value of 3 cards, and your opponent's getting the value of 1 card. So you're netting kind of 1 card off of doing Howling Mine, if you want to think of it like that. Um, and then Stacks is kind of the same way. You can play one Stacks piece that's going to make everything in your opponent's hand worse, and that Stacks piece is like worth the value of 2 to 3 cards. And this is a concept known as virtual card advantage. The number of cards in theory hasn't changed, but the value that's being gained out of these cards becomes better in comparison to your opponent's cards, or puts you in a situation where you are just benefited by these cards in a more significant way.
Hmm.
Um, and I like how Twilight Knight brought up Nekuzar, because
Right.
Nekuzar was one of the first decks that I saw that was kind of like this, because it's a cEDH deck that just says everyone gets extra draw, but they
Right.
get hurt off of it. But I'm going to use something like Curiosity to gain even more draw off of it. So Nekuzar was an interesting look off of it, because he's an actual example of a group hug commander that has a way of winning the game, just very straightforward. Um, but
Yeah, normally, like the examples I pointed off the bat, at least with Selesny and Silvala, like you're giving people draw potentially, and you can pick and choose when to do that. But normally, you want to have a silence effect in play and then make people deck themselves with a way to refresh your library, right? So it's a little different strategy. You're playing with one of the core functions of MTG. Like you can't, if you don't have a deck to draw from, you as a wizard are done. You're the worst wizard in the world. You ran out of spells to
you're out of
cast.
spells. You got no
Right.
scrolls.
Like I don't usually look at like this game from a bird's eye perspective or like a outer perspective, but yeah, technically in the lore of the game we are wizards casting spells against one another, like a Nekusar. But yeah, Nekusar is really dope. I mean, Grixis is a pretty fantastic shard, so like you can't go wrong in those colors. And then obviously the effect is really fun, and obviously it's all inbuilt. Like you're giving them draw, right? And yeah, I would say we didn't answer the question. I would say Nekusar is group hug. You can consider it group hug, depending on what else is in the list. But you would probably run wheels in this list, right? Whenever opponent
Yeah.
draws a card, yeah. So yeah, if you run enough wheels and you try to leverage them as much as possible, obviously this would have really benefited from a Hull Breacher. But there are still cards that you can manipulate that affect others when they draw. But to get back to group hug, Livio and Ludovic.
So I've played with this deck maybe 2 to 3 games, and it was a menace, because if you get out any kind of rule of law effect, players can only
Right.
play one spell a turn, and you have any of your draw engines on field. Like for instance, a new one which I fell in love with was Academy Lore Master. Academy Lore Master is blue blue for 2/3. At the beginning of each player's draw step, they may draw an additional card. If they do, their spells cost 2 more this turn. So you get that group hug, but you're probably not winning this turn, because you're getting not Trinisphered, but double Thaliad.
That's so weird.
Um,
So like but this is interesting. This is a group hug card, but it's a really interesting one because it has, obviously if they have removal, then maybe they can suffer this, but it really benefits the players that are control or are going slowly at the game or just need to recover, right? Sometimes you just get blown out. This benefits them because they're probably not going to cast anything else right this turn, outside of 1 or 2 spells, and then just hold. But then for the list that's trying to go quickly, yeah, because it's not if they do spells they cast this turn. It's not if they do the next spell they cast this turn cost 2 more to cast. It's like literally every spell. So you're not going to want to ad nauseum off of this and try to go off then. You know what I mean? So you have to be very selective of whether you take that or not. And I'm sure in a lot of cases people just don't take it. So it's really only benefiting a select few, right? Where most of the everyone draw effects that I've seen are you draw. There's no choice, right? It's not a May trigger. You kind of have to do it.
yep, yep.
I like this one a lot.
Yeah, it's actually a really cool card. And a lot of decks will actually just say, "Oh, I've already done my big flashy turn. I only planned on playing one thing this turn anyways.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just take the draw, pass, and hold up removal."
Yeah.
I'm cool with that. And because of that, a lot of people will do that. And if you have a rule of law effect in play, the game is not going to be moving at all, which gives you time to build up a win.
Yeah.
Because if you have a rule of law effect in play and everyone's drawing like 3 cards a turn, everyone has a counterspell. Literally everyone. So that one spell you're going to play is not going to resolve. So you don't want to play that spell, and then you pass turn and everyone draws 3 more cards, and then no one wants to do anything. So you just kind of hit this point where if you have a rule of law effect in play and any group hug effect in play, the game just freezes.
Huh.
That's it. The game is pretty much ended right there.
And you felt like this list has had enough of an impact on its own, like you being the only group hug deck to where
Yeah.
well, what did the games devolve into at this point? I mean, I know
The game's devolved into sitting and waiting for a while.
Really,
Because
really.
there's always the one person who says, I'm going to remove the rule of law effect. And then if everyone says, yeah, let's remove it, I'd respond by just saying, okay, Livio, I exile the rule of law. Livio again, return it. That was your one spell per turn. It's back. It's in the field. No one can play anything.
Yeah,
And
Livio's super effective for this then.
Livio makes it so much more brutal because none of your stacks is going anywhere. And the other things in this deck are just pieces that let you gain value off Livio by abusing ETBs to remove things or fix your board, so you can still play the game because you're
Right.
using Livio's effect. You're not casting anything, so rule of law doesn't hurt you. And then you just kind of make sure that no one has anything that's going to progress their strategy other
Mm-hmm.
than keeping up interaction. And
S-
then,
so Tijman Hofstra says, so you sort of need to get an uncounterable spell or so that wins the game. Well,
pretty
that's
much. So for
yeah,
everyone else, they need to get something that wins the game through counter spells and removal. With you, though, you don't because you have Livio. So on the end step before your turn, if you have a win, you
right.
remove your rule of law with Livio, combo off, and win. If you don't win, activate Livio and return the rule of law. So you're
Right.
back where you were.
Right. Or you just play your Grand Abolisher and then
Yeah,
go to
exactly.
town. Yeah, and then your opponents like hope that they have a creature specific counter in hand or something that can hit creatures in the mana represented to use it. Which is interesting because like you don't really know when a good time to pop off is. I feel like a list like this could probably benefit from telepathy if I'm being honest.
You
Just
probably could. I just usually don't run telepathy in
oh
cEDH, but you definitely could.
oh you should totally for this deck though. Because how cruel would you be knowing like they don't know your hand and you're giving everyone this lovely draw, but you know exactly when it's okay for you to pop off. Really, I mean, you're gonna be arch enemy in that instance. Like they're gonna wait to get you out. Like collectively, if you're getting all that knowledge, never mind. Maybe telepathy is a bad idea. I feel like you'd get targeted immediately if you played telepathy
Yeah.
with this strategy.
The way that this deck wins though is just a bunch of one card combos
Right,
because you have Triskaidekaphile, which
right,
that just lets you draw a couple extra cards, have no hand size, and if you have 13 cards in your hand on your upkeep, you
right.
win.
And then again, like if she's gonna get removed, just like protect her with Livia,
Yep.
put her back,
Um
and then just make sure you have 13 at the beginning of your next upkeep, which is really easy to do. Like if you have to use a spell off turn, then you're down to 12, right? But then you can use her to draw back up to 13, or two
yeah.
spells, draw back up to 13.
And if you
Yeah,
if you go over and you need to go down, well, 22 of your cards are instants, so
right,
play anything.
right. You should be there. Yeah. But you were saying
Um
mostly one card combos. So
Yeah,
well,
so Triskaidekaphile is one that's just kind of you play it and wait, and then you'll eventually hit the win.
mhm.
But that's probably the worst one in the deck. The other ones that are actually usable and good are Spellseeker and Micromancer and Intuition,
I just
which
want to
are
say it's nice not seeing Thassa's Oracle or Lab Man or.
yeah. But why do that when
Anyways,
I can just loop something else for the win? Um,
such as.
but Spellseeker, Micromancer, and Intuition are three one-card combos that set up Underworld Breach by themselves. And the way that you do that is you do Spellseeker or Micromancer for Ephemerate, and then there's some line that either like gambles you into Underworld Breach or Enlightened Tutors you into Underworld Breach,
Mhm.
and you get there. And Intuition, we did a video on that, so
Yeah.
everyone knows how to do that.
Yeah,
Um,
we did do a video on that. You should know.
yeah,
But in
we all
these
know.
colors, it's fairly obvious. It's going to involve Lion's Eye Diamond, Savine's Reclamation, and Underworld Breach.
Yep.
But yeah, that strategy's been around for a while, so you've likely seen it if anyone plays Blue and Intuition in your at your play group. But yeah, and so outside of those three, let me see here. I could see Ephemerate being absolutely necessary for her, though. I was looking at it earlier. Like I'd never seen the Micromancer before. I can't find her. Where is she? Where
No,
is
it's four
she?
drop.
I believe you, but yeah, I was just looking at her. There she is. There she is. Yeah,
And Micromancer is just significantly worse Spellseeker, but it's another Spellseeker, so
yeah.
you don't complain.
It's funny because I've never seen this card. Like I wasn't paying attention for it, but I can see where it's usable here. You like tutors. We like tutors. She's a 3/3. So there's some value here. But on that note, like we were listing off some cards there that fall into the group hug strategy, and let us know if there are any other cards that you feel are necessarily group hug by way of effect. And again, those are stacks pieces that, and we're going to call it, it's interesting that we're roping it into stacks by definition, but like cards that give your opponents value, in the essence of like Howling Mind effects, like giving them draw is essentially stacks by way of they might find removal or a counter power for you. And then again, please pile on, like if there are any other group hug cards that you feel we missed by way of effect, let us know. But on the topic of wheels, like I know a lot of people wouldn't consider wheels group hug, and I know you had a discussion with a friend over wheels being group hug.
So yeah, I had a friend who was just pissed off at group hug in general, and I was making the argument of I understand why you're annoyed. It's not group hug. It's the fact that people are playing group hug wrong and are just going herder, I'm gonna have fun and give people cards. And my friend brought up the point, well, no one plays group hug in cEDH because group hug is not a viable way to play the game. Group hug is just kind of crap and can't do anything, and it just kind of ruins the game. I'm like, people play group hug in cEDH. Wheels are group hugs, and my friend just went like, and then got super pissed off, and then was basically yelling at me, and I'm like, hold on. I'm not saying in cEDH you go herder, give people draw.
Right.
I'm saying that there are times in cEDH when giving people draw is the right choice because you need to work together to stop the king, the archenemy. And then I gave an example of like Rhystic Study. You'll use Rhystic Study to give your opponents cards because you know the other guy who has that 5 mana up is going to nos. So I gave that example, and I was able to kind of explain to my friend, like, yeah, you'd probably be willing to use a wheel to refill everyone's hands if someone has like a board of like 10 mana and a full grip, and everyone else is like kind of low on everything and near hellbent. So wheels are very much so group hug in a couple different instances because you are giving people cards, you're giving people value, and you're filling up people's graves.
Were you saying Rhystic Study in that same vein as group hug?
Rhystic Study can be used as a group hug style outlet, but it's everyone else who chooses to feed the Rhystic player. I would not say Rhystic is group hug though. It's like a same kind of concept, but
right.
I would not call Rhystic group hug.
But I feel like it's more group hug than it is stacks. So in my opinion, if I were to cast a silence, like if a silence were to resolve, and the players weren't allowed to interact with me, stacks, in my opinion, are cards on the table that actively stop me from potentially winning the game or stifle me from taking actions that would allow me to win the game, right? And if I were to get a silence effect off on a board against 2 Rhystic Studies, I wouldn't consider those stacks pieces. They can draw as much as they want now. I don't really care. Did you leave anything on the board that's permanent that stops me from winning the game? To me, that's stacks, right? And by extension, hate bears, like just creature-specific stacks. So it's funny because I've never heard anyone refer to Rhystic Study in certain scenarios, and like that scenario pops up more frequently than you realize, where you're just like, yeah, here, just I'm not gonna pay the 1. You need the card. We need to do this. It's funny how often those scenarios pop up, and I would have never thought of it as group hug until you just stated it there. So I would say it's more group hug than stacks. I can say that for sure.
It's because it's interesting because in cEDH, the game plan is to win, and people tunnel vision into that a little too hard without realizing all the things they can do to win other than just A to B. So there's a lot of things that people overlook in cEDH that actually do impact the game in a pretty heavy way. Even that one Rhystic draw can win you the game, even if you're giving it to your opponent.
It's funny. Well, it really depends on what's at the table, right? Like what other lists are at the table at the time. So sometimes it's as simple as going from A to B with your deck. It's funny because I think about when I play Oswald, like sometimes it's A to D to G, back to B, and then somehow I wind up at Z, where I could potentially win. and there's plenty of like different play lines that allow for a win. But when you have tutor in the command zone, it's fun how you can pivot very quickly. Like, oh, you know what? Actually, I should grab this 2 CMC stacks piece instead. Other lists are sort of just relying on their hands for these strategies to play out, but it's curious how some lists only operate on an A to B strategy until, you know, trying to keep things PG here. Poop hits the fan. trying to keep well, that's another thing with the MTG ambassadorship I should mention. No, not that much cursing and not that much drinking. So it's, again, we'll probably have a separate conversation about that whole thing later.
Once we get all the details and everything worked out, yeah.
Yeah, but I was excited to tell you guys about that. But I'm sorry, you were saying?
So I was looking at chat. So for Tijmen, I don't know if I pronounced that right at all. Tijmen, though if the board is permalocked and you can't remove your own stacks, combat is an option. And also, what if they draw channel cards and interact with you that way?
That's a big what if. Like, that's if their deck consists of channel cards. Like,
I mean, Boseiju. Every green deck runs the new Boseiju.
Sure. Or there's only a handful of channels that are actually really viable. But yeah,
there's the white enchantment that people play. That's ETB exile something until this leaves, and you can channel to slow flicker it.
Yeah.
I will say, so combat being an effective option. Yeah, combat is a very good option, but people are just gonna start removing all the creatures in play as well for when the board is locked. So combat isn't too common. Also, you're playing Ludwig, so people don't want to hit you because they want to try to find a way out of the crappy situation that everyone's in. So if they want to draw extra cards to get multiple wins so they can break through, they're not hitting you. Or at least they're not hitting you frequently. And then with the channel cards, they shouldn't matter because you have Livio, so you're not casting anything to protect your board. They'd need multiple channel cards, and that's not common, like, at all. But fun thing, the initial version of this deck ran Dismantling Wave, which is the cycle card that says 2 and a white sorcery. When you cast this, each opponent, I think, destroys a artifact or enchantment they control. Or
sacrifice,
cycle for sacrifice. Cycle for 8 mana, and then destroy all artifacts and enchantments. And that's a cycle, so you don't cast anything and you get around your own stacks pieces. But I just kind of was at the point where I'm like, well, Livio kind of already does that. I don't think I need that for the new version, and this is the new version.
Yeah, but Seiju does get around Grand Abolisher, though. I was just like, doesn't he stop this? But I mean, you could technically activate the ability of channel on Boseiju, right? As it pertains to Livio Ludovic, though, like you were saying, like Livio's there to stop the channel from having any sort of relevancy.
In other group hug decks, it can get through it though. Boseiju can get past the stacks and then make it so the game actually ends, but that's what redundancy is for. And there's actually a lot of new creatures that are really good rule of laws, like the Archon of Emeria and the new one, the Phyrexian.
Right. Oh my gosh, Phyrexian. I want to say Revoker, but that's the old one. Oh my gosh.
It's the one you made a short on, memeing about saying I'm going to make my friends play Phyrexian Tribal.
I mean, I thought that video was funny.
It was. I enjoyed that.
Jokadai, before we move on to how decks evolve, we were trying to keep this one in under an hour, and we're doing okay. I think we'll be like an hour and 30 minutes today. Jokadai says, I'd like to hear what you all think about playing extra land effects in cEDH. And I think this is outside of the group hug topic, excuse me. You mean general, like exploration effects, like things that allow me to put additional lands into play, right?
I believe that's what's being said, yeah.
Yeah, your thoughts, and I'll just read off extra exploration, excuse me. But this is what's being referenced here. You may play an additional land on your turns. Sometimes it's really good. I mean, in that Jund list with the Planeswalker, that's a Panther.
Windgrace, Lord Windgrace.
Lord Windgrace cares, you know. I played exploration there, and Burgeoning, I think. There's a couple of cards that have this effect or similar effects, but what do I think about playing them in cEDH? You can start with this one.
So I actually do like them for a couple decks. I don't put them in like everything, but I'll put them in a few decks. Um, it's usually decks that care about your lands, like Tatiova or Jorn, God of Winter. Those are kind of the two decks that really care about you having lands because Jorn says untap all of your snow permanents pretty much every single turn, and you can do some shenanigans with floating mana and cheating in OG Jin-Gitaxias and stuff like that. So Jorn cares because you do want to play those snow lands.
Hmm.
Tatiova cares because you draw extra cards and you're trying to chain extra turns.
Hmm.
So those decks really do like it. Outside of those, not a lot of cEDH decks want them. I
It's just
think,
not a great form of ramp, sadly. Like,
yeah, the only deck that doesn't care about lands that I played burgeoning and exploration in was old stick fingers because I had a deck called Golgari Godo, which was an old stick fingers deck,
it's pretty.
and the idea was you put four creatures into your graveyard as the only four creatures in your deck, and it was Genesis and then the Asmo Ooze line. And
Mm.
then you just pass turn on your turn, trigger Genesis, returning Necrotic Ooze to your hand, cast Necrotic Ooze, win the game. And then you'd repeat, if someone counters your Necrotic Ooze, you recast it next turn because you just get it back. Like
Mhm.
Genesis was brutal in that deck, and that was the only other deck that actually wanted to run these land ramp effects because
Yeah,
there's usually better options. But in that deck, you're like, I don't care about anything, I just ramp.
right. Like in Tatiova, a burgeoning could be pretty effective, obviously, because what's really happening here is like, yes, you're ramping pretty heavily, but if you're not, what I'm saying is you kept a hand with a lot of lands. Right, so you're legendary, like the thing that you can cast every single game, like that thing that's in the command zone, it better benefit off of having lands come into the battlefield to some effect. So outside of the examples we cited, any future legendaries where lands matter, for sure, I think playing again your exploration effect or burgeoning effect is going to be relevant, but I wouldn't say that these are effective forms of ramp. I can see where, if you're looking at this in a cEDH setting, but it's budget cEDH, right? Like you're trying to play competitively, but you can't afford the Mox Diamond, which, kind of the same thing, right? You're discarding a land. You needed that additional land. Lands mattered in that instance. Sometimes you'll have a Mox Diamond hand, and you only have a one land for that hand. You know what I mean? And that sucks in much the same way it would as a exploration or a burgeoning. But it really is dependent on who you have in the command zone. And I would say it's almost, I don't want to discredit people that use these types of effects solely for ramp and don't have benefits, because you could have things in the 99 like Lotus Cobras and such that do care about lands entering the battlefield, and it could help you ramp into, whatever situation you're trying to find yourself in, like some big cast, right? Some big finale of devastation into a game-winning play. So it's in a cEDH setting, I'd say no. I think in an EDH setting, sure. And in a cEDH setting, I think it would be most viable with legendaries that care about lands.
Yeah,
But I think that
either
answers the
lands are
question.
very heavy mana, and
Mm-hmm.
that like very heavy mana is the only other one. And I think that's just old stick fingers and the new Atali, the Blightsteel Atali. That might be a
Yeah.
deck that wants
Mm-hmm.
them, but eh.
But Jokta says, thank you, of course. And well, what about Cycle of Tawara, Soaring City, Return Grand Abolisher, then Cast Silence? If you want to consider Rhystic Study stacks, I'm going to give it to you, Tishman. All things being equal, if no one can do anything and the board doesn't have a permanent that says I can't do something, then I don't consider it stacks. Like the scenarios where, yes, what if can happen in a plentiful of ways. Like there are definitely outs depending on what's being cast, but provided no one can cast anything, activated or otherwise, does the board dictate what I can or cannot do? And Rhystic Study in situations where they're just drawing, because sometimes, like, even if I didn't cast a silence, sometimes you can feed a Rhystic Study, and I've played games where like the person has 17 cards in hand and like they just didn't pull into the right solution, so they still lose, right? It still wasn't effectively stopping me. And sometimes you have to play games where you just pull into it. You're like, okay, fine, you know what, like, I know that this game's going to go on a lot longer if I don't try to win now, because there's like two stacks list, right? And the board just finally got freed up of like the last Archon of Emeria or whatever. And you just need to play into it. So sometimes You just play into it. You're like, oh, I don't have the mana requisite to pay for the heuristic. Fine, I'll pay. I won't pay it. And then that person has, X amount of cards in hands and still doesn't have a solution. Like that happens too, right? So what if can be applied to however you optically want to look at the situation. You can apply it in several different ways, but in my opinion, it doesn't affect my plays as much as a Trini Sphere would, or as much as you had a card in this group hug list that I really like that could see a lot more play. Lore Mage.
Lore Master?
No.
Lore Master, Lore Mage, something like that.
I wanted to point out this card, Weathered Runestone. Like like a Weathered Runestone. Like this is really a great effective new stacks that people don't leverage as much because a lot of people are on the strategy that this affects. So if you're not, then Weathered Runestone is really good stacks. But things that stifle predominant strategies in EDH or cEDH, it doesn't matter what you're playing. I know you're talking about group hug in general, but curious if mono blue stacks aside from Urza is viable.
I would say that you can play stacks in mono blue, but it always turns into a control deck more so than a stacks deck, because you'll sprinkle in stacks which will affect the game, but mostly you're counterspelling and bouncing stuff. That's kind of how I view it. I think that you can probably make it work with the right commander, but I'm not sure what mono blue commanders would be really good for stacks.
Right. It's funny when you consider like mono-colored lists in general, and I think this truth can be applied to most mono-colored lists. They generally rely on the strength of whatever their legendary is doing, right? Whatever the commander is doing for you. Because mono blue doesn't have the luxury of all of these great effects that you'll find in triple color or more, right? Generally people refer to it as a 4 to 5 color good stuff, but the truth is, like, depending on what part of the color pie you're in, like your 3 colors, you probably have a wealth of things that make up 70 to 75% of your list, and then the rest of it is cards that help produce play lines that get you the win, right? Either in tandem with your commander or just by themselves, and then your commander is just netting you, in most cases, draw. If we're going to be honest with each other, most of the game winningest list just rely on having a lot of colors, having draw in the command zone, and then the 99 is 100% solved. Like it's the same package in every other list that contains Grixis, and then you splash in a few, redundant effects and or this is just the truth of the matter. But yeah, you get what I'm saying. I don't want to talk on that too long.
We're all counterspell stacks. Yeah, because that wouldn't be considered a control deck. Counterspell tribal.
That's cool. I like I've seen some cool Baral lists. You don't see Baral too often. I know also the Flip Jace was really popular for a while there too as a mono blue list. But yeah, I don't really see, in cEDH that is, I don't really see that many mono blue lists outside of Urza though nowadays. And Octavia was a cool one to highlight, honestly, because it's so counter to the general strategy of mono blue. And then there's also Orvar cEDH. That's not stacks though, is it?
It's value. It's like a value control deck. The 2 blue commanders that I kind of quickly found that I think could be cEDH stacks commanders are Unctus Grand Metatech, or Metatect, and Drafna, founder of Latinum. So
let's start with Unctus.
Yeah, UNT or UNCTUS. Very weird spelling. So Unctus is kind of a combo deck, but the rest of the deck is control pieces and tools and stuff. I think Unctus can be a stacks commander just because you're filtering through your deck so quickly with just having extra creatures that let you loot that you're going to try to hit some kind of stacks piece that will let you slow down the game so that you can hit one of your combos.
If you have a way to make Seeker of Skybreak blue, which exists.
We do.
Which exists, yeah. But I mean, that's not mono blue. I'm just putting it out there. There are blue cards that do the tappy untappy thing though, right? Like there's crab.
There's 3 that say tap this to untap something, and it can include itself. So there's 3 things that are 1 card combos with Unctus to win the game. And there's a bunch of things that you can do that are like 2 card combos. So Unctus is a really good cEDH commander, and I'm surprised he isn't seeing more play.
Yeah, no, but, I did never heard of this card. So this is cool. Yeah. There you go. There's one.
And then the other one is Drafna, Drafna.
Right.
So
FNA.
yeah, FNA.
Ooh, hey.
I love calling him Robin Williams because he does kind of look like Robin Williams.
Oh.
So Draftna's cool because you can keep copying your stacks effects over and over and over and over and over again to the point where no one can do anything. Like you can just go, okay, I'm gonna bounce let's say sphere resistance. I'm gonna bounce sphere resistance, replay sphere resistance, copy it, do it again, do it again, do it again. I don't have
Mhm.
mana. Bounce Soul Ring, replay Soul Ring, copy it, repeat, repeat, repeat. I have the mana. Get more spheres. So you can kind of slowly lock out the game with Drafna. And in addition, what was the other part? You can get Chalice of the Void on every single number and just lock everyone out, which is really funny.
That's so weird. Yeah, Drafna is really dope. And like the barrier to entry is really low. Like you can get Drafna down very quickly. Alongside his wife, Hercule Drafna built a legacy of scholarship that endured for the millennia. Is this the same artist that does the art for that one red card? The guy whose like wife died and he like makes
I
dolls?
don't know.
It's just very similar in composition. And anyway.
Um,
Do you know
but
what I'm talking about though? The one who makes copies of creatures in the graveyard.
oh, yes, Felden. Felden of the Third Path.
Uh
Um,
see,
but
Chase Stone. Okay, look at the Chase Stone art.
hold
Look
up,
at draft
I'm
art.
waiting for the stream to pop up.
There's one inspired the other, I have to say. One of these inspired the other. Tell me that's not true.
Hold on.
The composition's so similar. At any rate, moving on. Let's discuss how decks evolve. So
Really quick, I did want to add this for Drafna as well.
okay.
There's a one card combo for Drafna, which is why he is cEDH viable, and it's Ugin's Nexus. If you
Oh,
Yeah. So if you get Ugin's Nexus, you can take infinite turns.
if Ugin's Nexus would put into a graveyard from battle, and so if a player would begin an extra turn, the player skips it. Instead, exile it and take an extra turn. If Ugin's Nexus would be put into a graveyard from the battlefield, so basically you would copy
You
it.
you get the copy, then the original enters, sacrifice the copy, trigger, exile and take an extra turn, bounce the original, take an extra turn, repeat.
And that's because it's a legendary. So
Yep.
yeah, so it's a state-based action. One would go into the graveyard, right?
Yep. So
sorry, yeah, it would be put into
those
the
are
graveyard.
the mono blue stacks guys, in my opinion.
Mhm. I like that a lot. That's actually really funny. I've not heard of that combination. That I'd love to see that though. Again, do you think it's going to be as consistent as a Urza or something? Probably not. But that's fine. Well, here's the thing. On our next topic, like how decks evolve, I could say that if there were more Ugin's Nexi that released for that particular list, then that could be potentially cEDH viable. But our next topic and our last one for the day is how decks evolve. I'm fighting a sneeze. Not only in terms of like the redundant number of effects like I just suggested, but strategies that are employed for the list. And this is usually rooted in what new cards came out that produce or help you procure a win. And I kind of want to pinpoint some cards with the deck, the top that we're going to be using as our topic of discussion. But on that note, how have decks evolved recently? Well, Marath has gone like one that immediately came to mind and one that's been suggested on the channel quite a bit recently for like a revisit is Marath, because there are so many redundant effects that help to produce a win in Marath, and it's great. But I have to say, Marath, a lot of the main combos ones that synergy well with Marath rely on two other cards. So there's 3-card combos that can be a little, what am I trying to say, hinky to set up. But there are 2-card combos that exist in Naya, plenty of them. So it's not like there aren't additional strategies to manipulate outside of wielding Marath to do infinite damage. But also Tasigur, and that's the deck we wanted to discuss today, because this is one that's sort of had a full pivot from its original strategy. And I'll let Will discuss this one, but I want to pull it up.
Yeah, Tasigur was interesting because up until about like a little bit less than a year ago, Tasigur was the big bad control deck that would just keep getting stuff back from the graveyard until it hit some kind of infinite mana combo.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's kind of a turbo deck that can also control the game still, but Tasigur went from try to find Dramatic Scepter and win the game to try to find Neoform and then do Hullbreak Horror combos. If
Hmm.
you don't have what you need for Hullbreak Horror, get your Neoform and get like Toxrill or something. And this deck that we pulled up, it's not my deck. I will
Right.
say that. This is one that I pulled up from Moxfield, and I'll credit the user at least
I
for this.
I
Because I
copied it on tap onto Tapped Out, but I think the version I left to you guys was the original one. Regardless,
Moxfield one.
yes, I hope so.
Yep,
Uh,
yep.
did I leave the Moxfield one, the one you sent? If not, I'll put that one back up. That's the one I
let's see,
meant to leave.
yeah, we have the tapped out Marath one, and then we have the second one which says please one moment. I'm gonna refresh and see if we have it now.
Hmm.
Um, because I want to make sure that we have it for it's not up yet. But
I'm just looking at drafting again. I'm sorry,
yeah,
because it's not 10 mana take an extra turn. In regards to what Tishman said, it's 8 mana take an extra turn, which is honestly like not that high a barrier of entry in my opinion. Like doesn't what's that one blue card? Like you would use the title card, the one that makes all your islands tap for 2 instead. Jeez, what's it called? Like there's ramp in blue.
oh,
There's
High Tide.
high tide. There's definitely ways to get there. Like hold your high tide, hold your high tide for that. But sorry,
I
the original creator. Did you credit them for this
so
thing?
yes, so the original creator is Skevs, I believe is how you pronounce that. SKVIZ. We'll probably have the list in the summary at some point, or the description. My bad.
It should be in there now. But I
Yeah.
don't know if it's that list. Regardless, I'll switch it. But what are the core cards you'd say that pivoted this one? I think you mentioned it already.
So we had like Neoform and Birthing Pod for a while, but the thing was we didn't have any good 7 drops for the longest time. Um, Recently though, we got Hullbreak Horror and we got Toxrill in like the same year. And those made it so that we could turn Tasigur into something really useful. And the other two notable mentions are Coma, Cosmos, Serpent, and Nezahal, but
Hmm.
Hullbreak Horror and Toxrill are like the two main ones.
Yeah, so they're both. I mean, I'll switch between them, but let's talk about Hullbreak Horror and like how this helped the deck pivot. And it's weird because Tasker, I think it has always been considered a cEDH list, but then when you look at something like Hullbreak Horror, it's such a weird. I wouldn't say it's like an obvious inclusion in a cEDH deck, but it really does work here. But let's break down these two, and I'll let you
Yep, yep. So
get to it. Sorry.
Hullbreak Horror first, I guess. Hullbreak Horror is 7 mana for 7/8 with flash, can't be countered, and whenever you cast a spell, you can either bounce an opponent's spell to their hand or bounce a non-land permanent to its owner's hand. The reason why this is so good is if you have 2 pieces of fast mana, you just cast one, bounce the other, cast one, bounce the other, tap them in between for infinite mana. Tasigur wins you the game because you have enough mana, or you have infinite mana. Simple as that. Um, so Hullbreak Horror is just Tidespout Tyrant, but it's 1 mana less so that you can pot into it.
Right.
And then
And Tidespout Tyrant. It's another blue card, but again, we don't need to look at
yeah,
it's
it's
more or
8
less
mana.
the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And then in addition, Toxrill, which is a really good control tool. 7 mana, 7/7 for Slug Horror, and at the beginning of each end step, not just yours, that's notable, put a slime counter on each creature you don't control. Creatures you don't control with a -1 or get -1/-1 for each slime counter on them. And whenever a creature you don't control with the slime counter on it dies, you make a 1/1 black slug. And you can pay a blue and a black, sacrifice a slug, and draw a card. This is really good because you're just slowly wiping the board while building up a board of a bunch of 1/1s that you can sacrifice to whatever, or sacrifice to your Toxrill to draw cards. This card is just no board dot deck. No one is allowed to have anything on the board if it's a creature, and you're gonna have a massive board that you can use to beat people down. So if the game gets slow and there's like a actual rule of law in play, the
Mm-hmm.
enchantment,
Mm-hmm.
you're just sitting there letting the game control itself out while beating everyone down. So Toxrill was a card people thought was either going to be like some insane new broken commander or not played at all, but it just became a really good tool in Tasigur.
Kind of funny how that
So
worked out. Yeah, the end of each end step is so relevant there. It kind of reminds me of it's similar in effect, but you mentioned Coma, Cosmo, Serpent, but this list, I know Rebel tackled a deck, I believe, on one of our Brew Wars a while back for this list, or for this legendary. No, it was in the body of a not Najila, the list she likes using. It was in the body of a separate deck, but it was used to great effect, if I'm not mistaken. But it's the opposite. At the beginning of each upkeep, you make these giant snakes. You obviously you can't pull into this the same way as you. Wait, no, it's 7
you
mana.
can. It's
Yeah,
7.
never mind. But yeah, this is not. I would say you probably go for Toxrill, probably over this. I mean, 3/3s are better than 1/1s, but
Yeah. So the 3/3s are better, but it's the consistent board wipes and card draw makes Toxrill probably better than Coma, but some decks just choose not to run Coma because they don't really care. They just run a Hull Breacher and Toxrill, and
yeah.
some lists run a bunch of things so that your Neoform is a toolbox.
Hmm.
Um, I will say a very funny interaction that I've seen almost every single time I've played against this deck is someone phantasmal images the Toxrill, and there's 2 Toxrills in play. And then it's putting 2 slime counters on everything that each give -2/-2 instead of -1/-1. So everything is getting -4/-4 per turn instead of -1/-1 per turn.
That's so vicious, dude. I
Yeah.
mean, what I love about this, let me see this. What if you Gilded Drake this?
The Toxrill?
Yeah, creatures you don't control.
Yeah.
For,
So everything would keep all of your stuff. Like if you Gilded Drake and stole someone's Toxrill, your
yeah.
stuff would still have the slime counters, but they wouldn't get -1/-1 anymore. And then you'd start putting counters on everything else with Toxrill.
I'm just thinking like you want this on your side of the board. So whatever you
Yeah.
can do to do that, because just phantasmal imaging this is so funny, dude. Because as soon as it gets out of control, like Timna, like, all these cards are just donezo.
Yeah, it was so dumb and so funny, but it always happens. I don't know why.
But I like how that this list has pivoted, and if you guys know of any decks that you want to discuss that have evolved over time, and again, that could just be a redundancy of effects, making them more consistent. For me, I'm always looking for new cards for Belby because I just want her to work. I just want her to work more efficiently and more consistently. But I don't know if she's gonna get there anytime soon. But I love that list so much. It's cool that Tasker has evolved though. Again, 3 colors. You're gonna see something that helped the list, but it's kind of done a full 180 from where it was before. But yeah, so it's not only in the sense does like a deck evolve because of what we've already discussed. It's like the kind of targets you want to tutor, the kind of hands you want to keep. Like it just changes the overall play strategy. That's what we mean by evolution. But yeah, are there any other decks you want to discuss? And obviously, I'll turn it to the audience.
There's a lot of things that I've seen in general that have changed because I know over like the past 2 years, Stacks in general has changed because Wizards of the Coast has just kind of said fuck it and then printed a bunch of good Stacks cards because we didn't have Collector
Or
Oof.
screw it.
Yeah, but it's like we got Collector Oof, which made green a lot more viable for Stacks.
Mhm.
We got Opposition Agent and Dothy Voidwalker, which made black a lot more viable for Stacks. And then white got Drannith Magistrate, Archon of Emeria, and a bunch of other things. So weirdly enough, Stacks went from like that weird concept that you sprinkle into a deck to an actual viable deck archetype that a bunch of people played. So Stacks in general has evolved a lot over the past 2 years as well, because people have just gotten more tools to play with, and every color has gotten some form of Stacks, except blue, because I think the most recent Stacks they got was like Hull Breacher, and that got banned, and before that was Narset Barter of Veils, which they wanted to play anyways.
Yeah, Phyrexian Censor. I just had to look it up again. But yeah, like Stacks, the more and more Stacks pieces that come out, the more redundant effects we see, like the more consistent those lists will become. And honestly, the rule of law effects are the worst ones, especially the ones that are in the lower CMC range. Like when Deafening Silence came out, the fact that you can rule of law on turn one with any hand, like you could keep a bad hand. If you're on play and you have that, sometimes it's like, yeah, okay, this is keepable. It's almost like having root maze or something that you know, like on the play is really, really going to harm your opponent's list, because especially in cEDH, like you're expecting all of the fetch lands, right? So root maze is doubly effective in those scenarios. But yeah, the lower CMC of these things, the more redundancy we have of these effects, the better it will only become. But yeah, stacks in general, I've always had an affinity for, because I feel like a majority of what people play is the opposite. You know, you kind of want to do things really quickly like Sonic does, and as exciting as that is, it's not the only thing that works, right? I remember that one boar, the Selesnyan boar elephant thing was really popular. Yasharn, for a hot minute there, but I don't know if Yasharn still played. Let me know if you guys roll with Yasharn. You remember this one?
Yeah, the boar. Yeah, I remember that. I helped like one friend brew it, and I've had a couple people play it against me, and it is such a feels bad to play against, because it hits so much more than you would think.
Yeah, exactly. And they have to remind you. You feel extra bad. Speaking of collector oof, do you play mana rocks in your green oof null rod deck?
I play a few.
Yeah, so I still think you do. That's an interesting question. We can just like this can just be a Q&A before we close out here. Because that was all the discussion topics, and we're just a little over an hour, but that's okay. But yeah, sorry. Speaking of collector oof.
So I play a few mana rocks, because I'll usually play the fast mana Chrome Mox, Diamond, Soul Ring, Mana Crypt, and those will be like the 4 staple ones that I put into most decks. Sometimes Amber, if the deck can play Amber, because low CMC commander. But I'll only play like those 5 for the most part, and I'll try to use elves more so than anything else for the remainder of my mana ramp. But I won't be afraid of playing mana rocks. I just will not lean into them as much.
That's fair. Yeah. I mean, I've used Null Rod and List, and you still want like the Soul Ring to play your Null Rod, right? Because as bad as it is for you, provided you intend to play around it, right? Which you should, right? Don't throw it in your list elsewise. If you have a strategy that plays around it, you're not going to be trying to remove it, right? But it will waste your opponent's resources. So that's good. Like, and then as soon as it is removed, like the additional mana rocks you played out into it are probably fine, right? Unless it was like a Psych Rift and then they try to go off again or something. But then you also have that opportunity. So I think the, what is it? Is it the opportunity cost of playing this card? I'm gonna use that phrase. Try to sound smart for you all. It makes sense. So yeah, even if you run a collector oof or a null rod, it's interesting with stacks. Just because you run a certain type of stacks effect doesn't mean you shouldn't play for that strategy. Like if you're on a Grafdigger's Cage or something that could potentially muck up. Oh, you guys can't see this, but right, any sort of reanimate strategy, and there's plenty of Grafdigger's Cage effects out there. Provided you have a way to get around it, or provided you have a way to remove it on your own terms that doesn't hurt you. Like I'll run Grafdigger's Cage and Oswald and certain effects that do stifle that list, but I have ways to get around it, right? So you can also play stacks in those situations.
I had a cEDH Keskit Thrasios deck, which Keskit is I'll read him off instead of having us search him up, because he's just a Phyrexian human artificer for 3, and he's in black. You can tap him and sacrifice 3 artifacts and or creatures, and then look at the top 3, put 2 to hand, 1 to grave. I had a deck that he was kind of the prominent commander because there was a bunch of weird setup that you could do with Keskit. And I ran Collector Oof and Null Rod in that deck, even though I had a crap ton of mana rocks in there. But I could just use Keskit to get rid of them at any point when I needed the mana, so I didn't care. So
right. Yeah, so it's in that instance it's a totally fine. Because like Collector Oof is really good against Dockside. Right? Yeah. Like we all understand that, so there's no sense in like not and having it incorporated in the list, provided you have a workaround. It's fair. It really
Yeah.
depends. It's very deck dependent. And again, like Grafdigger's Cage and the list I had referenced really hurts my Mer Welder lines of play. But if I'm aware that like I'm going to try to go off with a Mer Welder with Savine's Reclamation, right? Like self-mill, pull it out. I'll get rid of it prior. And then just pivot into a different stacks piece, right? Something that doesn't affect this line of play, but will affect, if should I fail, a separate strategy that someone at the table might be playing. So that list has a variety of answers that I can just pull from the list at any point in time. And then I can remove them, right? Almost like a Kesket can. But on that note, if there's no other questions, guys, I think we're going to close this one out. Right. We're getting these shorter and shorter in time frame. Hopefully still equally as enjoyable. But any closing thoughts, Will? Anything you want to say?
Well, I hope I was able to kind of help people understand group hug and when not to group hug a little bit better, because it's an interesting topic. Group hug is like that weird zone that no one talks about, but it's actually kind of useful in a lot of situations.
Should we try to get a petition going to have mtgfandom.com correct their
Change that sentence, that one sentence.
Yeah, often group hug decks do not have a way to win on their own. So they do. Did they
That's not
just
a group hug deck, that's a troll deck at that point.
Right. I'm wondering if they just added the word often like a moment ago in response. They're just like, oh no, don't call us out on this. But at any rate, guys, it was fun chatting with you all. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Stay tuned for next week's Untapped, the MTG podcast. We're gonna do this every Saturday morning at 11, I believe, is the promise, and we're gonna be consistent with that. Over the course of the week, you'll see some more content, and obviously the roadmap of content will change moving forward depending on what's worked out with Wizards of the Coast. But all very exciting news for us here. I'm excited to keep producing content for you guys, and I hope you keep coming around to enjoy it. But we'll see you on the next one. Oh.
Yeah.